Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Nola Hennessy from Serenidad Consulting in the Peace Ranch, and I'm sitting next to a lake that's called Reflections Lake. It's in a place called Sanctuary Cove in southeast Queensland. Many years ago, I moved Serenidad to this area, and if you look at our website, you'll see that Sanctuary Cove is where we've had our postal service for quite a while, and we did have an office here at that time in late 2015 for a few years. And I'm looking at moving us back to this area again, particularly because it's so pristine and it's so tranquil. There's a lot going on at the moment because the International Boat Show is on, so you'll hear a bit of traffic noise. I'm looking at buses and cars that are in front of me now, and I apologise for that. But I thought it was important to tape this particular podcast today because I've been thinking a lot since Tina Turner died, and I want to express my condolences and share with you how I met her and why I think, in hindsight, she had a bigger impact on my life at the time than I realised at the time. And I want to pay tribute to her and her courage. In the late 70s, and we're talking before Tina turned 40, when she had separated from her then husband. I don't think she was divorced at that time, but she was attempting to start her career all over again. She was working really hard. She was playing at a place called the Canberra Theatre in Australia's capital, and the Canberra Theatre then seated maybe 200 or 300 people. And I was in my second career, but at night time, I still worked in the hospitality industry, and I was running the bar section of what was called the Mahogany Room, and it was a restaurant, a fine dining restaurant, up until about 10 p.m, and then from 10 p.m. till about 3 a.m, it was a disco. So there was lots of music, mainly, records that were played by the DJ, but it became a discotheque. As one could imagine, in the days of Saturday Night Fever, there were lots of discos around. But Canberra was a very quiet, not a cosmopolitan city at that time. It's changed a lot since. But the Mahogany Room was only one of 3 really special nightclubs, and it was directly opposite the complex of the Canberra Theatre. And I didn't know when I was on duty that night that Tina Turner would come down the stairs. So if you can imagine, I'm standing in the bar area, and she came down the 2 flights of stairs, beautiful carpeted, lots of timber, very elegant place. She came down those stairs and planted herself at the bar. I don't recall what she drank, but she sat for about a half an hour, and I could tell, I knew that she had been in concert in Canberra. I had not gone to see her because I couldn't, but she didn't come with fanfare, certainly didn't come with any bodyguards. She simply came down the stairs, she sat, had a drink, and I could tell that she was decompressing from having done her performance, and there was a lot of on her face, I could tell there was a lot of quiet reflection. And that's one of the reasons I've chosen this place today, Reflections Lake. Now, if you think about where she had been and where her life was tracking, she was starting small, she was playing wherever she could, she was performing so that she could re-establish herself. And by no means was she a stranger to the performing arts, but I could tell that she was in another chapter, and it was a really challenging chapter for her. And no different to anybody else that who has left a relationship that's a long-term relationship or left a partnership in business. It takes a while for you to find your feet again and to be empowered. So this podcast today is about standing in your power and having the courage to keep moving forward. Now, the synchronicity for me came last night when I was watching free-to-air television in Australia, and I tuned in quite late, but there was the documentary about Tina Turner. And I had never seen that documentary before. It's 45 years since she and I met, and we only met once. We only talked for probably 10 full minutes in the time that she was sitting at the bar of the Mahogany Room. What struck me last night was what she was saying in her documentary, and I talk about this in my books. Things happen to us that we have to take in our stride. Now, I say in my books that things happen for a reason, they happen in the right sequence, they involve the right people, but we may not know that at the time. We always have things that challenge us, and we may not necessarily deserve what we get. And usually the really bad things we don't deserve. But what we have to do is to rise above and say, well, I'm either going to stay in victim mode, or I'm going to use this as an opportunity to learn and to grow, and I will change the way I operate in my life because of this new experience. So that's about learning a lesson, applying the learnings. She also talked about life is about choices, and in No Boxing Allowed, I say also, as we choose and as we decide, so our lives are formed. Now, when I met her, I was 21. I posted on Facebook that it was around 1976, but I actually think it was 78 because I was working night times, and in 76 I was running an international hotel, whereas in 78 I was in my second career in ICT, and I was supporting my friends who owned the Mahogany Room, and I was running their bars at night time when I was available. So that was normally Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night possibly. Now, being 21, I'd already experienced a lot of abuse in my life from within the family structure and outside of the family structure. But I hadn't at that point entered into a marriage or relationship that was super controlling, that was emotionally, sexually, physically abusive, and I had yet to experience that. So in meeting her, what struck me, and I can close my eyes and visualise her sitting at the bar. She leaned into the bar at one point. I was drinking a Kahlua and milk, which was my standard drink at the time, and she was drinking something in a cocktail sort of glass, but I don't recall whether it was a martini. I don't think it was a creamy cocktail. Could have been a martini, don't recall. But she leaned into me and said, life is always going to give us challenges. And we talked a little bit. She didn't disclose too much, and I could tell that her separation from Ike, her journey in this new chapter was challenging for her, and there was obviously still a lot of raw stuff that she had not really wanted to speak about. But because of my own experiences in life and having been abused from when I was a child, when I was a teenager through to when I was in my early 20s, I instinctively knew that she and I had a connection. And it wasn't until last night that I really realised what that connection was. And this is where synchronicities really matter. Oftentimes we'll meet people in our lives and we may not ever realise why we met them. Sometimes it'll be an instant, oh my gosh, you're connected, we met because, and you know straight away. But usually at some point you will be able, something factual will come to you and you'll be able to join the dots. And that's where the synchronicities lie. the dot for me was, I think she came into my life. I happened to be working that night. She happened to be giving her concert that night. She could have gone to the Speakeasy. She could have gone to the Key Room in Canberra City, but she came to the Mahogany Room. I was on duty that night. We met, we had an opportunity. It was very, very sparsely patronised that night. There weren't very many guests in the area, and it certainly hadn't started to become a nightclub. That usually started at about midnight. So it was sort of before midnight time frame when she came. And the fact that she came and we met and we talked and we had eye contact, I now realise that she was brought to me to teach me things that would empower me later. And I remember thinking after I met her, this is a very strong woman. Now, interestingly, she would have been in her late 30s, around 38, 37, 38 then. And when I left a very controlling and toxic marriage that I didn't really want to have in the first place anyway, I was thinking about it and planning my contingency at 33, but by 40, 41, I had gone my separate way. And that was better for me. It was enough was enough. Now, I would have left earlier had it not been for having a son, and I wanted my son to have as normal a family environment as he could for as long as possible. I wanted him to be tall enough, strong enough, old enough to be able to deal with things more as an adult than as a child. And I'm grateful I did that. I'm grateful that I did that for his sake. But when I think about her age and my age, wasn't that much different. So by the time I decided enough was enough, I was around the same age as Tina, perhaps a little older. And at that time, I had many relatives, people that I was related to by blood, not my family at all. Those relatives would accuse me of being too strong. Now, that's laughable when you look at somebody like Tina, and I thought it was ridiculous. Nobody is too strong. We're only strong as a result of our experiences and the resilience that we build. So when you're accused of being too strong, what you're hearing is the other person saying, I'm nowhere near as strong as you. I feel intimidated by your strength, therefore I'll put you down. In Australia, that's what's called the tall poppy syndrome. When somebody excels, when somebody does a really great job, when they're fantastic at what they do, most people will attempt to chop them off at the knees and basically say, oh, no, don't be too good. We can't deal with that. Be mediocre. But the few that celebrate success and that appreciate hard work and that appreciate strength are the ones that you need to keep in your universe. The other thing that struck me about that documentary last night was she talked about how she was sick to death of people asking her about her past with her ex-husband at the time before she married her later husband, who was, as she says, her only real marriage to her husband. But her first marriage taught her a lot of stuff, but she didn't want to keep bringing it up. It was almost like the journalists and the reporters want to hear all the rubbish. They want to hear all the negative so they can feed off the negative. She was wanting to let that go, and nobody was letting her let it go. Now, she held the memories, but she wanted to let go of the emotional attachment to those memories, and that took her a while. But you'll notice in that documentary, by the time she talked about those memories, it wasn't with an emotional connection. And that I can certainly relate to with her. You can have memories, but they don't have to be important to you emotionally. So folks, you know, if you can take some time this week to say a prayer for Miss Turner, be thankful that she was with us as long as she was. Look for the synchronicities, reflect on why people are in your life and why they've come and gone from your life. You'll learn a lot of lessons, and I certainly hope that you apply the learnings. Bye for now, folks. See you next time.